All right, earlier today, the House passed a stopgap funding bill that extends government funding further into March, buys them about another week on the first continuing resolution, a couple more weeks on the other one. Now, the long-term negotiations continue. Now, the deal will put 6 negotiated spending bills on the floor next week under suspension. That means they have to get a higher threshold of support because they're going directly to the floor with it. And it will push until later in the month a more hotly contested group of appropriations bills, including those for the Department of Defense, Homeland Security, which is where the border is found, and Health and Human Services. Joining me now to discuss this, Congressman Andrew Clyde. He serves on the House Appropriations Committee. He represents the 9th Congressional District of Georgia. Congressman Clyde, welcome back to Washington Watch. Good to see you.
Tony, great to be with you this afternoon on Washington Watch.
All right, so another short-term continuing resolutions while we're told negotiations continue. That means one of two things have to happen. You've got to get the appropriations bills through the process, or we're looking at possibly another continuing resolution?
Yeah, that's kind of what it looks like right now. We've passed this continuing resolution today, which I voted against because we should not be doing this. We should be passing our appropriations with Republican policy. We should not be passing a CR under suspension. That means that the Democrats have to vote for it, which means it's not going to be a Republican bill. It's going to be basically a Democrat bill, which is why I voted against it. But the solution here, I think, since it appears that we're really not going to get the policy wins that we put in our appropriations that we worked so hard to make sure happen, since it appears we're not going to get those policy wins, I think the best thing that could possibly happen is a year-long CR, continuing resolution, which literally then implements the 1% cut and would save almost $100 billion in reduced spending over last year's Pelosi's 2023 budget, and also then all the earmarks that have been added, all those pork barrel projects, would be eliminated as well, because you can't have earmarks when you have a continuing resolution.
All right, so let me go back and let's unpack that for just a moment. The appropriations, that's the process that, you're a part of that. You've got to go through, you look at the agencies, you look at their budgets, and you approve, their spending request. And so this is what Congress really is supposed to do. But it hasn't done it in over 20 years. So you talk about policy, okay? So this is where these so-called policy writers, and meaning like money's not going to be spent for abortion, it's not going to be spent for transgender surgeries, for the DEI, all this crazy wokeness. This is where you rein this in. But what you're saying is, even though you've gotten those in there, we're not going to end up with those. Why?
We're not going to, because the Republicans are unwilling to fight for it, in my opinion. You have this issue of the higher spending, and the Senate, we sent those appropriations over months and months and months ago. The first one went back in July. We passed most of them in September and October, and they have sat idle in the Senate because the Senate refuses to take them up unless the Republican wins are stripped out of them. And so now with the higher spending levels that were agreed upon by leadership and the policy wins that aren't there anymore, then the Democrats will vote for it. And we're bringing it up on suspension, which means that it has to have Democrat votes to pass, as opposed to bringing it forward on a rule vote, which would make it a Republican bill, and it could pass with only Republican votes.
Okay, so what it comes down to is you've got the Republicans in the Senate, the Republican leadership, really not going to fight for these policy gains in the appropriations bill. So you got the Republican leader in the Senate, you've got the Senate Democrat leader, then you've got this Democrat leader in the House, and then you have the Republican leader in the House. So you really, it turns out to be 3 against 1 when it comes to the negotiations process, does it not?
It does, but here, the Republican leader in the House is the Speaker. I mean, he's the third most powerful person in our government. The 3 against 1, that's not equal. The Speaker should have the authority there, not the same authority in this negotiation as Hakeem Jeffries, the minority leader, but that's what it seems to be. That's the way this government has worked for many, many years, and that's one of the reasons I think it's so broken.
You got to fix that. We're almost out of time. One of the other options here you made reference to is a year-long CR. This was a part of negotiations that took place right when the Republicans took over. That if you have to go to a year-long CR, it kicks in these reductions. This could be the best way forward, but how do you accomplish that?
Well, I think we have to pass it here in the Republican House and send it over to the Senate. And now that Mitch McConnell is no longer the leader in the Senate, and as you see, there's members in the Senate are already lining up to run for leader, which means that Mitch McConnell's authority is pretty much in the tank.
Right.
I think you see a great conservative shift in the Senate. So I think we could win now on a year-long CR, reducing our spending by over $100 billion and eliminating earmarks.
How do you get it out of the House? Very quickly, I know you've got some defense hawks on the Republican side opposed to this. You're going to need every single Republican vote, are you not?
Well, we are, but I think we could actually get some Democrat votes on that as well, because unfortunately, it's going to be Pelosi's policies, which we're going to basically end up anyway with this half omnibus that we are talking about passing in March.
It's going to be very interesting to watch this process play out. I, for one, would be in support of a year-long CR. It'd be one way to get some reduction in spending. Andrew, Clyde, always great to see you. Thanks so much for taking time to join us.